I found out my brother slept with my wife for 5 years, and the child I was raising turned out to be his. But the most brutal twist came when our father rewrote his entire $2 million will to me. Okay, I just need to get this off my chest. It's only been a month since my life collapsed, and I still can't sleep properly. I'm Ethan, I'm 35, and until recently, I thought everything was fine. A good job, a suburban home, a son, Leo, who is 5, and a wife, Sarah. We've been together since college. Think it was a perfect picture? Forget it. In a month, everything turned into a rotting mess, and the blame lies with my younger brother, Dylan. With that guy, we always had a dynamic that drove me crazy. He was the golden child. All he had to do was smile at our mom, Eleanor, and all his mistakes were forgiven. Ethan was always the quiet, composed one. I earned my own scholarship, paid for my own life after college. Dylan, at 28, is still leeching off our parents, Richard and Eleanor. In school, he could set me up, steal my money, even threaten me, and Mom would always say, "Ethan, he's just playing. You're the older one, be smarter." That was the mantra of our home. Because of him, I had to learn to fight and toughen up, just so he would stop bothering me. As soon as I left for college, I breathed a sigh of relief. I decided I would just keep him at a distance. And it was like that for almost 10 years. We only spoke on holidays, and I was happy about it. My wife, Sarah. We met in our final year. She was very fun, bright, full of life. When we found out she was pregnant with Leo, we got married right after graduation. Leo is our son. For 5 years, I was his father. I got up with him at night, taught him to ride his bike, went to all his school performances. He is my blood, my continuation. Or so I thought. A couple of years ago, Sarah had a moment. A small flirtation at work that, as she said, grew into something more, but she ended it. I was devastated, but I didn't want Leo to grow up in a broken home. I forgave her, I worked on it. I kept telling myself, people make mistakes. We'll get through this. I decided I had to be the one to hold the family together. It was hard, but I felt we came out of it stronger. That's what I thought until the beginning of this month. 31 days ago, on a Monday, Sarah returned from some routine work trip. I was sitting in the living room, watching the news, and she just walked in and sat across from me. She looked different. Not just tired, but sort of empty or maybe guilty. She said we needed to talk. You know, when a person says that, you immediately know, this is the end. I froze. All the worst-case scenarios flashed through my mind. I asked, what happened? She couldn't look me in the eyes. She started stammering about being confused, that she loves me, but not like before. The usual set of cliches, and I was already bracing for divorce. But what she said next just overturned the entire world I had built. She said that her relationship with Dylan, my brother, never actually ended. Not just a couple of months like I thought after college. 5 years. They were together. All those years while I was working, while I was building our life, while I was the wonderful father, as she liked to call me, they were constantly meeting up. She called it chemistry that she couldn't ignore. It was physical pain. Like I was simultaneously hit over the head and had the air sucked out of my lungs. I just stared at her, unable to believe that this person I shared a bed and my life with was sitting across from me, telling such filth. I asked about Leo. Couldn't not ask. 5 years ago, when we got married, she was already pregnant. I remember our visit to my parents for Christmas, when Dylan was surprisingly incredibly polite to her, and they kept laughing at his stupid jokes. I thought then, great, they found common ground. I even thanked her for trying to mend the family relations. It turned out she was mending a very different kind of relation. She said that after that Christmas, when I got drunk and fell asleep, they slept together in the guest room. And yes, she wasn't sure. She said she chose me because I was more reliable. Me. More. Reliable. I didn't scream. Couldn't. I felt like if I made a single sound, I would explode. I simply got up and started packing my bags. She started crying, grabbing my arm, asking for forgiveness, saying she loves me, said I shouldn't punish Leo, that he wasn't at fault. I reminded her that she had no right to talk about punishment when she wasn't sure if I was his father, and that she knew what she was doing when she got into bed with my brother, who had been trying to destroy me my whole life. The next morning, after a night in a hotel, I drove to my parents' house. I couldn't keep it inside. My father, Richard, was always strict but fair. He, unlike my mom, stopped defending Dylan after he almost set my hair on fire in high school. I walked in, barely saying hello, and laid everything out, from Sarah's first infidelities to the shocking finale with Dylan. Mom, Eleanor, of course, was the first to rush to Dylan's defense. He would never. Sarah is just getting revenge. That's when I did what I probably should have done a long time ago. I called Dylan on speakerphone right in front of my parents and asked him why he had been sleeping with my wife for so many years. He initially denied everything, of course. Screamed, "Are you crazy, Ethan? She's lying." But when I said, "Sarah confessed everything, and she said Leo might be yours. Do you confirm that you slept with her all these years?" He went silent. Then, stuttering, he started saying it was just chemistry, that Sarah seduced him, that he was better than me. He didn't even apologize. He just confirmed it. He thought he was talking to me alone. When he heard my mom scream, "Dylan?" through the phone, he realized he was caught. That's when Richard, my father, took the phone. I'd never heard him like that. He was calm, but his voice was like ice. He didn't yell. He just spoke of betrayal, of honor, of what Dylan had done to the family. He finished by saying that Dylan was no longer his son, that he was cut off from all funds, all money, and that he no longer had the right to appear in their lives. He simply hung up. For the first time in her life, Mom didn't defend her golden boy. She looked at me and then hugged me tight. She cried and apologized for never believing me all these years. That day, my pain from the betrayal was replaced by a strange sense of justice. And 2 days later, my father told me his lawyer was waiting for me. He rewrote his will. Everything. $2 million. To me. He blamed her. She blamed him. And the shocking paternity test was just the beginning. My brother and ex-wife teamed up to destroy me, but they didn't account for my father's revenge. Okay, picking up where I left off. That conversation with my parents, where I exposed Dylan and Dad cut him off from the $2 million estate, happened 28 days ago. The vindication was huge, but it was quickly overshadowed by the looming divorce and the paternity test. My father, Richard, didn't waste a second. He immediately set me up with his corporate lawyer, a guy named Hank, who handled things with the cold efficiency of a machine. My instruction to Hank was simple. I wanted Sarah out of my life. I wanted the divorce finalized as quickly as legally possible, and I wanted to protect myself from any financial damage. Hank was clear. Sarah's repeated infidelities, especially with my own brother, completely shifted the legal landscape in my favor, particularly regarding alimony. I hadn't seen Sarah since I walked out, but her lawyer immediately started trying to play hardball. They were arguing for significant alimony, claiming I earned far more and that she needed financial stability since she was sacrificing her career for family. The audacity made me physically sick. It was a standard, aggressive legal move, but knowing what she'd done made it feel like a personal insult. Hank just laughed and told me to relax. He had the evidence, her own confession to me, recorded on my phone when I packed. I learned to cover myself a long time ago, thanks to Dylan's antics. Then came the DNA test. This was the biggest, nastiest hurdle. I needed to know for sure whether Leo, the boy I loved and raised, was my son or Dylan's. It was a formality for the divorce proceedings, but for me it was the only way to get true closure. When Hank handed me the envelope with the results, my hands were shaking so badly I almost tore the paper. I stood there in my temporary bachelor pad, staring at the words. The probability of paternity for Ethan is 0%. Leo was Dylan's son. The world stopped spinning for a second time. 5 years of waking up, of lullabies, of scraped knees, of pure, unconditional fatherly love. All based on a lie woven by the two people who hated me the most. It was worse than the affair itself. It wasn't just my marriage that was betrayed. My very identity as a father was stolen. The rage I felt was volcanic, but it was quickly replaced by a hollow, sickening despair. The boy was innocent, but I couldn't look at him without seeing the living, breathing evidence of their betrayal. The smug face of my brother staring back at me. Sarah, predictably, lost it when she realized the full weight of the legal consequences. Without a claim on me as the father of her child, and with her adultery exposed, her demands for alimony evaporated. Now, she was facing reality. No house, minimal settlement, and a child that legally belonged to another man, Dylan. And that's where the true, ugly team-up began. About 2 weeks into the divorce proceedings, I started getting texts. Not from Sarah, but from Dylan. After the initial shock and his pathetic attempts to justify himself, he'd been silent. Now, the texts were a desperate mix of anger and self-pity. "You ruined my life, Ethan. It wasn't my fault. She seduced me." And then the kicker. "You need to talk to Dad. She's pressuring me for child support, and I have no money. You owe me." Owe him. The man who slept with my wife and stole my son was now demanding I plead his case to our father, the one who just gifted me an inheritance worth millions. I didn't respond. I simply blocked his number. But he found a way. He started contacting my mother, Eleanor. And the pressure worked. Mom, despite her recent attempt at standing by me, still had that decades-long attachment to her golden child. She called me, her voice trembling. "Ethan, please, he's your brother. He's sleeping on a friend's couch. He dropped out of college. He needs help. Can't you just talk to your father? Just hint that he deserves a second chance?" I was furious. I reminded her calmly, brutally, of everything Dylan had done over the years, culminating in this ultimate betrayal. I said, "He made his bed, Mom. A bed he shared with my wife. Now he can lie in it. If you want to help him, you can give him money. But you will not undermine the one person who stood up for me." It was a line in the sand, and it broke her heart. But I was done being the doormat. The final straw came last week. Sarah, in a moment of pure spite and desperation, leaked the story to some distant cousins, twisting it to make me look like the villain. The cold, rich brother who abandoned his family and his stepson. It was a pathetic smear campaign, but it was hurtful. My father, Richard, got wind of it and he was livid. He saw it not just as a petty family squabble, but as a direct challenge to his authority and his decision. Richard called me up, not to complain, but to execute the next phase of his plan. "Ethan," he said, his voice firm, "I want you to finalize the divorce, and when you do, I want you to go back to the house. I'm going to make sure they know exactly what they lost." The tension was building, not just between me and them, but within the entire family unit, ready to snap. The divorce papers are signed, the paternity confirmed, and now I'm heading back to the house where the lie started, with my father's full, financially loaded backing, to confront them one last time. I'm scared, but mostly, I'm just ready for this whole, month-long nightmare to finally end. I walked back into my house for the final showdown, and he was there, my brother, standing in my living room, daring me to kick him out. The fight that followed shook our entire family apart. The divorce was technically finalized 2 days ago, exactly 3 weeks after Sarah confessed everything. It was clean, brutal, and fast, thanks to Hank. Sarah got what the law decided was fair given her actions, barely anything. She was ordered to move out of the house, which was solely in my name, by the end of the week. My father's plan was in motion. He didn't just give me the $2 million inheritance. He wanted the final confrontation to be a spectacle, a clear statement that betrayal has consequences. He insisted I go to the house on Wednesday evening to oversee her departure and make sure she didn't trash the place out of spite. I drove there with a knot of dread in my stomach. I just wanted this to be over. I pulled up to the house and immediately knew something was wrong. There was an unfamiliar, beat-up sedan parked in the driveway, a car that definitely didn't belong to Sarah. I walked in, keys in hand, and the sight that greeted me instantly ratcheted the tension from 0 to 100. Sarah was standing in the living room, surrounded by boxes, looking pale and defeated, and right next to her, leaned against the mantel I bought, was Dylan, my brother, the man who had been completely cut off by our father. He was just standing there, like he owned the place, smirking at me. Well, if it isn't the conquering hero, Dylan drawled, not moving an inch. His voice was laced with the old, familiar contempt, but underneath it, I could hear a layer of desperation. I ignored him and looked straight at Sarah. You have until tomorrow morning. I need the keys and you need to be gone. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they were the manipulative kind. Ethan, you can't do this. I have nowhere to go. And what about Leo? He deserves a stable home. You're being cruel. Cruel, I repeated, my voice dangerously level. You had a stable home. You chose to burn it down by sleeping with my brother for 5 years and lying about my son. You forfeited your right to lecture me on stability. Where is Leo? He's at a friend's house, Dylan interjected, finally pushing off the mantle and taking a step towards me. Don't worry, your wallet is safe from his tuition demands, Dad. He spat the last word out like a curse. That was it. The accumulated rage from the last month. The betrayal, the lies, the paternity results, the smug entitlement of the golden child who never faced consequences. It all boiled over. Get out, Dylan, I said, not yelling, but in a tone that stopped him dead. You are trespassing. You have no right to be here talking to me or being anywhere near what was my family. Dad cut you off. The world knows what you did. You are a pariah. Now get out before I call the police. He laughed, a dry, grating sound. Call them. Let them see the rich brother trying to kick his poor family onto the street. You think Dad's money makes you a man, Ethan? It just makes you a coward who runs to Daddy whenever his feelings are hurt. No, I shot back, stepping into his space. I looked him dead in the eye, seeing the fear flicker behind his bravado. It makes me the one who finally made you pay for 20 years of trying to ruin my life. You hated me because I was quiet, I was successful, and I didn't need Mom to bail me out. You thought you could take the one thing I built, my family, and I would just take it. Well, surprise, Dylan. Your little conquest cost you everything. Your wife, your son, your money, and any claim to this family. You have nothing. He lunged at me. It wasn't a calculated punch. It was a desperate, childish shove born of pure impotent fury. The MMA training I took years ago, ironically because of him, kicked in instantly. I didn't hit him back. I simply grabbed his arm, twisted, and slammed him against the wall, pinning him with my forearm against his throat. This is my house, I gritted out, breathing hard. You don't touch me. You don't look at me. You are nobody to me. You and Sarah can figure out your little domestic bliss somewhere else. This is over. Sarah started screaming, frantic and loud. Ethan, stop. You're going to hurt him. I shoved Dylan hard enough to send him stumbling away from the wall. He was sputtering, rubbing his neck, truly shocked that I'd fought back, that the old, passive Ethan was completely gone. The golden child was tasting the bitter reality of consequences for the very first time. Get your things, I commanded Sarah, pointing to the boxes. Now, if I see either of you near me, my property, or my parents again, I will have Hank file a restraining order that will make your lives a living hell. You are both dead to me. Sarah, seeing the cold, final resolve in my eyes, finally realized I wasn't bluffing. She was crying, not for me, but for her shattered future. She grabbed a few final bags, shoved past me, and got into the beat-up sedan that was waiting outside. Dylan scrambled to follow her, giving me one last look of pure, concentrated hatred before getting into the passenger seat. They drove off, leaving me alone in the empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of a life built on betrayal. The conflict was physical, brutal, and incredibly decisive. I had won the battle for my own life, but the emotional war was far from over. I knew this wasn't the last I'd hear from them, but for the first time in a month, I felt a terrible, exhausting peace. He called me crying, completely broken. I had everything, his child, his ex-wife, and his money. The moral dilemma hit me. Do I use my $2 million to destroy him, or do I finally become the better man? The immediate fallout from the confrontation at the house was exactly what I needed. Silence. Sarah was gone, and Dylan was finally out of my orbit. It had been 25 days since I learned the truth, and the physical expulsion of my betrayers felt like a massive weight lifted. But as the initial adrenaline faded, a new, heavy feeling settled in. It wasn't relief. It was emptiness. The house was spotless, ready to be sold, but walking through those rooms, the nursery, the kitchen where we ate breakfast as a family, felt like walking through a museum of lies. I had won everything, the divorce, the money, the moral high ground, yet I felt profoundly lost. My father, Richard, called constantly, proud of my strength. You stood your ground, Ethan. You finally proved you're tougher than him. Now we finished the job. His focus was entirely on making sure Dylan and Sarah suffered the full consequences. He saw this as the ultimate justice for a lifetime of my being tormented. He even suggested I initiate the process of legally blocking Dylan from ever seeing Leo, claiming the affair made him an unfit parent. That suggestion was the beginning of the moral dilemma that hit me like a ton of bricks. Legally, I could crush them. I had the $2 million inheritance waiting. I had a top-tier lawyer. I could absolutely ensure Dylan remained a pariah, completely isolated and financially ruined. I could use my resources to keep Leo from ever knowing his biological father, effectively punishing Dylan with the deepest loss imaginable. That would be the ultimate revenge, the total annihilation of the golden child. But every time I considered it, a sick feeling twisted in my gut. Was I becoming exactly what I hated? Dylan was a monster of entitlement and cruelty, yes. But if I used my power and my father's money to relentlessly crush him, wasn't I just proving that money and spite were my guiding principles, just like his? Was my father's justice truly about my peace, or just his own deeply held resentment towards the son he failed to raise properly? Then, the plot twist, the moment of pure, agonizing vulnerability that changed everything. It happened yesterday, 29 days after Sarah's confession. My phone rang, showing an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. It was Dylan. His voice wasn't the usual sneering, arrogant sound. It was broken. He was sobbing, ragged and ugly, barely able to form coherent words. "Ethan, please, I need you to listen," he choked out. I stayed silent, letting him hang in the tension. We lost the apartment. Sarah's parents won't take her back because of the whole situation. They took Leo. They said they're keeping him until we can prove we're stable. My heart hammered. Leo, my son, was being used as a pawn by Sarah's own parents, who were punishing their daughter and my brother by taking the child away. It was a vicious cycle of spite, and Leo was caught in the middle. "We're sleeping in her car, Ethan," Dylan whispered, the humiliation thick in his voice. I have nothing. No job, no money, no college. No one will talk to me. Mom won't answer my calls. Dad." He couldn't finish the sentence. You won. You have everything. The house, the money, the life. Please just talk to Dad. Just say one word. I don't want the money, just tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I need him to stop. I can't live like this. It wasn't a demand. It was a plea. For the first time in his life, Dylan was completely exposed, utterly defeated, and genuinely afraid. I had never heard him sound so small, so pathetic. He wasn't the golden child anymore. He was a desperate, homeless man facing the abyss of poverty and isolation. The weight of the $2 million inheritance felt heavier than any curse. I could let him drown. He deserved it objectively, but a small, persistent voice in my head, the voice of the quiet, good kid Dylan used to bully, whispered, "Is this who you want to be? The man who watches his brother freeze on the street?" I realized my true test wasn't the divorce or the inheritance. It was this moment. Do I seize my ultimate revenge and watch him crumble? Or do I find a way to break the cycle of hate and spite that had consumed our family for decades? I had the power to destroy him, but I also had the power to offer a minimal lifeline, a chance at redemption he probably didn't deserve, but one that might save my soul from becoming as dark as his. My answer to him, what I decided to do with my newfound power and my father's legacy, would determine who I truly was. I had the ultimate revenge. His life was in my hands. I made my decision, and it cost me everything with my father. The final, shattering conversation that followed changed my life forever. But the ending is still unwritten. It's now been exactly 1 month, 31 days, since Sarah's confession. Dylan's broken plea on the phone hung in the air, forcing me to confront the deep, ugly core of my victory. I had achieved total destruction of my enemies. Yet, I felt no peace, only a profound moral sickness. I hung up on Dylan without saying a word. I needed to think, but I knew what I had to do. The revenge felt sweet, but it was poisoning me, turning me into a cold, transactional person. Letting Dylan and Sarah freeze in a car while their son was held hostage by angry grandparents might be justice. But it wasn't who I wanted to be. My father's $2 million was supposed to represent my freedom, not my weapon. The ultimate confrontation was not with Dylan. It was with Richard, my father. I drove straight to my parents' house. Dad was in the study reviewing papers. He looked up, expecting me to confirm the final steps of destroying Dylan's life. "The divorce is done," I started, my voice clear and steady. "The house is listed. I have the inheritance documents." Richard smiled, satisfied. "Good. Now, Hank will file the petition to block Dylan from seeing Leo. It's the final nail. We need to send a message that what he did is unforgivable." "No, Dad," I said, meeting his gaze. "We won't be filing that petition, and I need you to reverse the financial cutoff." The smile dropped off his face. His expression turned hard, cold, like the day he cut Dylan off. "What did you say, Ethan? Did your brother call you? Are you being weak again?" "I'm being me," I shot back. "I don't want to be the reason my nephew grows up without a father. A father who, yes, is a selfish idiot, but a father nonetheless. And I don't want to watch my brother starve. He doesn't deserve $2 million, but he doesn't deserve total ruin. You taught me the value of honor, not absolute destruction. This is your punishment, not my justice." Richard slammed his fist on the desk. "This is exactly why you were always too soft. He screwed your wife, stole your son, tormented you for decades. This money was supposed to be the ultimate statement. Our retribution. It was your retribution, Dad. Not mine," I countered, standing my ground. "If I use this power to utterly crush him, I'm just becoming a vengeful bully, the mirror image of Dylan. I won't let his actions define me. I am selling the house. I will keep the inheritance, yes, because I earned it through my own life, not by betrayal. But I will use a small fraction of that money, a minimal amount, to set Dylan up with an apartment, maybe pay for a trade school. A single, final chance to be a decent man." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother, Eleanor, who had been listening from the doorway, started to cry softly. Richard stared at me, his eyes full of disappointment. "If you do this, if you give that boy 1 cent, or if you interfere with the consequences I set in place, you are betraying me. I did this for you, Ethan, to protect you, to show you my support. You are throwing my support back in my face." "I'm doing what's right for my conscience, Dad," I insisted. "I spent 20 years trying to gain your approval by being better than Dylan. I finally am. And being better means not acting out of hatred." The culmination was agonizing. Richard looked at me, not with rage, but with a profound, terrifying sadness. "Then you are not the son I thought you were. You are weak. You have my money, Ethan, but you've lost my respect. If you help him, I want nothing to do with it." I walked out of that house with the knowledge that I had essentially traded my father's unconditional support for my own moral clarity. It was a shattering, complex victory. The aftermath, I followed through. I wired a lump sum to a discrete account for Dylan, enough for 3 months' rent and a certification course, but nothing more. I included a single, unsigned note. "This is not forgiveness. This is closure. Do not contact me again." I never told my father. I haven't spoken to him since that day, though Mom calls occasionally, confused and heartbroken. The house is sold. I moved into a smaller condo. I am financially free, but emotionally isolated. I know Dylan and Sarah are together now, struggling, Raising Leo. I made the difficult decision to cut all contact with Leo for the time being. It hurts like hell, but I can't be a constant reminder of the lie, and I need space to heal from the trauma of having my identity stolen. I told myself that once I'm stable, once I find peace, maybe I'll reconsider, but for now, the break is absolute. I have $2 million and a clean slate. I'm starting therapy. I won the material battle, but the emotional war left scars. I learned that winning revenge isn't the same as winning peace. The only thing I know for sure is that I ended the cycle of hatred. I proved to myself, not to my father, that I am not Dylan. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth more than the money.